The first rule in grip sport is you tell everyone about grip sport.
Crushing, pinch grip, thick bar, wrists.
If the best guy in the world can't lift 100 pounds on it, I don't give a shit about it.
Welcome back to the Grip Show, everybody. And we have some news to put out as far as Grip Sport International is concerned. We have some regional championship stuff and some different ideas we're going to be throwing around. So Eric Roussin, Jedd Johnson here, and we're going to be kind of breaking down the information that's going to be put out about regional championships and stuff moving forward and kind of what that looks like. And yeah, do you guys have anything that you want to start with there? Just to, I don't know, sort of lead in with the intent behind it and maybe what the aim and what the goal is?
I mean, I thought the sport is growing so fast. It's really growing fast, in my opinion. At least if you look at the percentage of people who competed versus year over year. And I thought we're now, at least in Canada, there are now promoters in almost every province. There's more and more promoters, throughout North America. And I thought, in my opinion, one of the best ways to help grow the sport is opportunities to compete. And I think there's enough people competing now that we can carve out the two countries into regions and have sort of a regional championship. And I think that would be something to aspire to win. Not everyone can make it to nationals. Not everyone, not everyone will place at worlds, but a regional, it might be a first sort of step of a sort of what I consider, a major achievement or a major title. So that was sort of the genesis of why I started thinking about this recently. And this is not a new concept. Jedd was just telling us, I think you were exploring this about 10 years ago, Jedd.
Yeah, I want to say there was a boom period at a certain point around 10 years ago. And I was like, man, we might be able to put together a regional championship. So I made a post about it on the grip board and I tried to find it, but I couldn't find it. And the regions that I was looking at were the old pro wrestling territories. So before it was WWE and WCW, I can't believe I just said WWE. Anyway, there used to be territories and the wrestlers would primarily wrestle only in those territories. The promoters would only promote within like a certain 3 or 4 state region. So I just knew that was a regional setup that was already carved out. So it was something that I proposed, but I never ended up following up with it. So I actually think it's probably better than what you've come up with the diagram where it's all cut out in the pie pieces because the regions are bigger. So I think it's a better concept to start out with than what I was going for back in the day.
Right. I was trying to set the boundaries for this map or what I developed. I looked the U.S. depending on who you speak to. There's no official really divisions. There are census divisions, but then there are other census regions, but then there are regions split up for different reasons. I looked at a whole bunch of maps, and I eventually sort of settled on this one. I figured Canada's not as big in population as the U.S. Probably doesn't need as many regions, and I thought these 6 regions, based on the current competitors and promoters, I thought it worked out pretty well. In every region, you could probably identify 2 or 3 very active promoters, and then some of them have a few, maybe one or two have a few less. But I thought, despite the size of the regions, and some of these are big, I thought it would be maybe a good middle ground. Not too many, not too few. So the U.S. has 6 regions, Canada has 3, and we already know people who host contests in these areas. And I would sort of like to see, we've published this and then you've published this in the newsletter. We've put it on the grip board. Now we're having this show. So I'd like to see who's maybe interested in who reaches out to host one of these regional championships. The criteria are pretty basic, but I think it can be a draw. Like if I was a newer competitor and maybe I didn't feel ready to go to nationals, maybe I would see this as, maybe not quite as far to go. Competition won't be as much, because what I had in mind was sort of the people who would compete in the regionals are people within the region. And I know that we've sort of, that's not that's not a requirement. It can be a co-branded event, which I think might be an easier lift if somebody's already planning a contest and then it's sort of a, they just add the regional title to it. That's possible. It muddies the water a bit because you're probably already hosting a contest. You might not be limiting it to just in-state competitors. But if I think if somebody does do that, maybe for the regional standings, you would just exclude the out of region competitors from that standing, but have your own regular contest standings for the rest. But I didn't necessarily think that they would all be co-branded. I was hoping some people would run standalone contests for this just to increase the overall number of contests. And it doesn't have to always land on the same promoters. So I'd like to see who's interested, who's potentially interested, and then we can go from there.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Yeah.
I had
Oh,
initially
sorry.
thought about co-branding the thing I'm doing in February, but I think it's going to be too busy. There's going to be too much going on all at one time. So I'm not going to do that.
Right. And we have the full, like my ideal for the first year is to have, I'd love it if each region had one of these this year. They don't all have to be at the beginning of the year. They don't have to be at the end. And it can all be on the same day. It doesn't really matter because if it's all people within just the given region, it could all be on the same day. It doesn't really matter. But at some point, like I'm also running a contest in March that I was thinking about co-branding, but I'm thinking, you know what, let's see what happens. Maybe there are others who want to host this, and it doesn't all have to be right away. So I'm also going to see how it goes.
Well, and the cool thing about this is it might bring out more promoters.
Yeah, exactly.
So I just spoke with Jeff Peterson yesterday, and he's really excited about this. He really likes this idea.
Where does he live?
He's in Minnesota.
Okay.
So Jeff Peterson was a really big name back in the early 2000s. So my first competition was September of 2003. And then another competition popped up out in Minnesota that I think was called Strong Arm Tactics, but I could be wrong on that. And I flew out for that as well as both Vigents, who were also at that first contest in Punxsutawney, PA in 2003.
Mm-hmm.
And Jeff Peterson was at that competition. So there were a lot of big names. It was over 20 people at that contest in Minnesota that it was promoted by Brian Carlton.
That's 20 people back in 2003 in the early-ish days of the internet.
Yeah.
And no YouTube and none of that. That's pretty impressive.
Yeah.
Yes.
So it was in the Twin Cities. I want to say it was around St. Paul, I think. And it drew other people in. So there was a guy named Matt Van Weel that I think was from one of the Dakotas, and he came in for it. So yeah, there was some magnetism about it back then at that time, where maybe because it was new, people wanted to get involved and take part.
Right.
So I think there were maybe like 10 to 14 at the first contest I went to, and then 20 plus at this next contest. And like we're going back to the time where Joel Sward and Jeff Bissonette were doing double-inch farmers walks at this time.
Yeah.
It was January of 2004. Dave Oslin was there, who a lot of people might recognize as being a World's Strongest Man competitor for several years. Trying to think of some of the other names. I roomed with a guy named Jeff Ford. He took me to the contest. It was brutally cold, I remember. So yeah, there used to be quite a group out there in Minnesota that were competitive.
Huh.
And Jeff was one of them. He's a certified captain of crush, and he also competed in strongman. He was really good friends with Dave Oslin, and they used to do a lot of competitions together in strongman as well.
Well, it's cool that 20 years later he's sort of getting excited about grip again. That's awesome.
Yep. Yeah, it really is.
Huh. Yeah. So I don't think this needs to be a very long video. If there's any questions or comments, feel free to reach out to any of us directly or put comments below, ask questions. and eventually we don't really know. I think the regional title in itself is desirable, at least to me as a competitor. I would think I would want to win a regional title, an official title.
Oh yeah.
And who knows? We might be able to leapfrog that into some sort of. There might be some added benefit or of winning that title. We don't know yet. We'll see how things go. But yeah. So I think probably in the first month or two we'll see who reaches out and shows interest in possibly hosting. We might eventually reach out to promoters directly if we think we have people in mind who might do a good job. We might be able to entice people to organize these contests if there isn't much active reach out towards us. But I guess we'll see how it goes. But I don't know. I'm excited about this. I think it'll be a fun addition to the GSI calendar, and yeah, looking forward to a great year in grip.
Yeah, no
So
doubt.
Eric, real quick.
Yeah.
I was going to say one thing that I was just thinking of, and like I said, this is kind of on the fly. So if there's not a, definitive answer at this moment, that's fine. Let's say we have numerous people in the region, kind of like nationals goes to a voting. Say you have numerous people that are really like, man, we want it in Minnesota, we want it in Ohio, and they fall within that same area. Do you think that's something that maybe the promoters should kind of like sort out between each other, or would it go to a vote? Is there any like process in knowing like, if there's people that equally want to host, who's going to kind of get that? I don't know. I guess who's going to get the actual
The nod.
bid or whatever? Yeah, exactly.
Jedd, let me know what you think. But I think one part will be, people who express interest early. Like if somebody, I think there's going to be advantage to reaching out to us sooner than later. And I think we also talked about if you've already organized a GSI contest, that also definitely helps. Just because we have a bit more of a certainty that the contest will be run well and that the details in what running a contest. So if this is your first contest that you're putting on, you might be at a slight disadvantage. But once again, it really comes down to how many people show interest. But I think those are things that we would weigh. And if we were contacted by 2 or 3 promoters who have a proven track record right away, I think we'd maybe probably reach out and say, and because the intention is to move this from year to year, maybe we can get them to agree, go, this year it'll be you, next year it'll be you in this area. I don't know. Jedd, what were you thinking in terms of this?
When Zach was talking, the thing that I thought of was what events are the people proposing?
Right.
So if you have someone that is proposing 4 or 5 events that we already contest and have a rich history, and then the other person, maybe they have less popular events, let's say, maybe events that are not in our top 100 tracking,
right,
things like that, then I think that could be part of the decision-making process, because I definitely think from talking to people that a lot of people are interested in getting into the database and showing where they stand on these mature lifts. So I think that could be something. I don't know if we would want to require that the events all be tracked. I mean, naturally, if someone's going to run a medley at a regional competition, we are not going to be able to track the medley. At least we don't have a way of doing so right now. But if one person wants to run, say, when it comes down to rolling handle, if one person wants to run a 2.25 crusher, which is extremely well established, and the other person wants to run a rolling thunder, which I think up to this point we still don't track, then I think that's a point towards the person that wants to run the crusher, simply because of the history that we have based around that handle.
Right.
Another example would be if someone had a Euro and they wanted to run that, but the other person was just going to pinch 245s. We're essentially backtracking 20 years in the sport. So I think that could be a factor as well. But that's just what immediately came to my head. Nothing set in stone or anything like that. That's just what came to my head.
Right.
I was gonna say, I think with with having an organization, right? that makes sense to me, having events that fall within that organization, because it just keeps things more regulated. You
Mhm.
know, it keeps the boundaries, kind of secure. Whereas, yeah, if you have somebody that's hosting a regional championship for Grip Sport International, but less than half their events are Grip Sport International events, then like what are we
Right.
really doing at that point? So I understand maybe not, if they run a 4 or 5 event lineup, maybe one event or like a medley, something that's not tracked. I get that. But yeah, for my personal opinion, I would say I would like to see probably, 3 out of 4 or the majority of their
Yeah.
events fall within the organization, because if not, then it's like, well, then it's not really the organization. So it's like, just for consistency, I think that should be something that promoters are really thinking about.
Yeah. Agreed.
At some point, I know I had suggested years ago, and again, it would be hard to find, but I know it's still on the grip board. I developed kind of a tier system for the contest, like gold, silver, bronze, where if the events were tracked and stuff like that, it was like a gold level. And if 2 out of the 5 were tracked, it would be silver, and if nothing was tracked, something along those lines. We're talking about a long time ago, so I don't know exactly what was in there, but we could dive into the grip board and find those and use that as fodder for developing a selection process based on the events as well.
Yeah. So
All
I
right.
mean, I,
Yeah.
I think, I just wanted to help get continue to get this news out there. I know it went out in last week's newsletter, went on the grip board a few days ago. Now with this video, people will be at least aware that this is what we're trying to institute. And ideally, if within the next couple of months, if things could get planned out, we're already getting emails, I know. So if you're a potential promoter interested in this, please get in touch with Jedd, and we'll get back to you.
Yeah, and I mean, everybody, like Eric mentioned, you can reach out to any one of us, and we're going to direct you to the right people or where you need to go. But Jed, for the sake of your newsletter, I,
Mhm.
I know it may be redundant because a lot of people already know, but this could reach people that maybe aren't on the newsletter. Could you just let them know just a little bit of information about kind of what you put out on your newsletter and how to get with you about doing that? Because essentially it's just emailing you and getting put in that system,
Yeah,
but that's where a lot of that good information is. So if you could just let people know where to, how to contact you so they could get in on this a little bit easier.
sure. I
Yeah.
welcome any method of contacting me, whether it's through my email address, through Instagram or Facebook, whatever the case may be. Leave your email address in a comment on my YouTube, and I will get you added. And the the email format is basically the first part is new updates. So anything that went on in the past week or 2 weeks, whatever the period was since the last time I sent it out, that's in the first section. So this past newsletter was the announcement about the regional championships, the announcement of Worldwide Grip Battle Chasing Elite, and I asked people to tag me in a Dave Tate Table Talk post, which I appreciate everybody who did that. And then something that's not new, but I leave it in there is soliciting nationals promoters proposals for the 2025 national championships. The next segment of the newsletter is an ongoing weekly updated calendar section of upcoming contests. So we have the World's Strongest Grip in California on the 26th, Feather Crush 2025 in February. Um, uh, and that's in Ottawa. And then we have an Australian competition put on by Isaac Pitt, the Hobart Hoist. And looks like I left the Napalm Nightmare World Championship in there. Oh, bad editing. You know what, Eric? I put precedence on the information you were sending me, and I like lost track of my own information. So there's all kinds of errors in here. So I apologize about that, everybody. But that next section is the contest. And I mean, we've already got stuff out to April, May, June. So there's already the calendar is already filling up. It's fantastic. It's only January. So I also keep a list of the proposals for nationals in there so people can see what's 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 already been proposed, and then some important links at the end. The 24-25 nationals qualified athletes, the qualifying methods for nationals, the current North American rankings, and a link to the top 100 list. So it's uh it's a good resource for quick reference, so you can grab some of these links, access them right away. And I don't know how many people we've got on there, but there's no limit. So go ahead and hit me up, get you on there, and you'll get an update just about every single week. And it usually goes out Thursdays at 3 p.m., but I usually write it Thursday morning. And then if anything changes or there's new additions, I can sneak back in there and edit it. So thanks for letting me talk about that.
Yeah, no, for sure, Jed. And another thing that you kind of just brought up there, this is probably like one of the last things we could mention, is it is kind of common sense for most people, but just something to kind of reiterate is for promoters that would be looking at hosting a regional championship within these regions we're talking, right? Mapping out something that isn't around other major contests. So you don't want to have your regional championship maybe the same weekend as nationals or the same weekend as a King Kong or it's just something like that. So it's a small reminder, but yeah, talking about how quickly that schedule is filling up as promoters or potential promoters when you're submitting stuff in, just kind of be aware and do some homework as to what other dates are already kind of blocked in. That way you're not basically double scheduling or trying to compete against something else and taking away from the your own competition or your own kind of momentum.
That's an excellent point, and that's actually one of the main things that I spoke about with Jeff yesterday, because
Mhm.
with him being new back into it, he wasn't sure what the established calendar kind of looked like. He really only knew about King Kong. So he's going to use that information to schedule his whatever he comes up with for his first competition back in the fray.
Yeah, that was it for me. Like I said, I just wanted to, like you said, it just popped in my head when you said it. It's just, with the popularity of things and the calendar filling up, you just got to kind of be careful that you're not, you might have some of your best lifters in your region competing, back to back weeks or something, and they just might not want to do the travel or they might not be recovered from other competitions. So
Mhm.
yeah, just something to take into consideration. But
Yep.
yeah, that would be it for me. So anything else? Pretty good.
I'm good.
Good for me, brother. I appreciate it. It was a good idea to cover this and put a little
Yeah.
information out. So if anyone has any questions, leave them in the comments or get a hold of us. We're happy to answer whatever you got.
All right. Well, like I said, guys, that should be at least a good intro for your regional update. As far as, I guess establishing a hierarchy of, these levels of competitions for Grip Sport International. And like Jed said, yeah, reach out to us, reach out to him, and just get involved. And yeah, like I said, looking forward to making 2025 a bigger year and yeah, keep the sport moving. So
Thanks,
that is
Zach.
it. Yep.
Thank you.